Julian Carter, a self-made billionaire and the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the U.S., boarded his flight from New York to San Francisco with a heart full of reflection. Despite his enormous wealth and towering success, he was still a humble man who never forgot his roots. Raised by a single mother in a tough neighborhood, he had learned to value perseverance, respect, and humility. Wearing a simple black t-shirt and dark jeans, Julian didn't look like someone who made Forbes' 40 under 40 list. He never flaunted his wealth, not with designer brands or bodyguards. For him, comfort and privacy mattered more, which is why he always booked first-class tickets. He liked the quiet, the legroom, and most of all, the space to think. As he entered the plane, several passengers were already seated. He offered a polite smile to the flight attendant at the door. "Good morning," he said with a nod. She looked at him briefly, then glanced down at his boarding pass. Her brows furrowed. "Sir, I think you're mistaken. Economy is down that way," she said, pointing back without asking for confirmation. Julian calmly handed over his boarding pass. "Seat 1A, he said. She looked at it again, then back at him, clearly confused. Her tone turned sharp. "This can't be right." "One moment," she said, and turned on her heel. Julian walked to his seat and placed his laptop bag in the overhead compartment. He was barely seated when she returned with a stern look on her face, now accompanied by the head flight attendant. "Sir, I need you to come with me," the senior attendant said. "Is there an issue?" Julian asked calmly. "Yes," the younger attendant interjected. "You're not supposed to be here." A few nearby passengers turned to see what the commotion was. A blonde woman in row 2 took out her phone and began recording quietly. Julian remained seated. "I have a valid boarding pass for this seat. You can double-check with the airline." By now, the pilot, Captain Reynolds, had stepped out of the cockpit. A tall, stern man in his 50s, he crossed his arms and surveyed the situation. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked. The younger flight attendant spoke before anyone else. "He claims to be in first class, but I think there's a mistake." The pilot turned to Julian, eyeing him head to toe. "May I see your pass, sir?" Julian handed it over. Reynolds studied it, then gave a curt nod. "It's legitimate." But instead of apologizing, the flight attendant persisted. "There must have been a glitch. He can't be in 1A. Maybe we can upgrade someone else and move him." Julian looked directly at the pilot. "Do you treat all your first-class passengers this way, or just the ones who look like me?" The cabin went silent. The pilot gave a heavy sigh. "We'll verify everything. Please be patient," he said, and motioned to one of the guards at the back. Julian's patience was unwavering. He sat back, crossed his legs, and opened his tablet. But what happened next would set the tone for a story that would go viral within hours. As the plane's crew huddled near the cockpit, murmuring and reviewing paperwork, Julian continued to sit calmly in his seat. He checked his emails, replied to a few business updates, and barely paid attention to the flight attendant repeatedly looking over her shoulder. Meanwhile, in row 2, the blonde woman who had been filming turned to her companion. "This guy is being harassed for nothing," she whispered. "I think I know who he is. That's Julian Carter. He runs Nextech." Her friend widened his eyes. "You're kidding. I use their security software." Word began to spread quietly between rows. A few passengers discreetly searched Julian's name on their phones, confirming what the woman said. Some looked embarrassed. Others were outraged. In the galley, the junior flight attendant was visibly shaken. She couldn't understand how someone who looked so unassuming, so ordinary, could be someone important. She began to feel the weight of her mistake. The head flight attendant approached her. "I told you to check the manifest first. Now look at what's happening." "But he didn't look the part," she mumbled. The pilot walked over, still grim-faced. "We verified his ticket. Let him be. And next time, follow procedure. We can't afford this kind of incident." But the damage was already done. As the plane continued boarding, a quiet tension hovered in the cabin. Some passengers avoided looking at Julian, while others gave him apologetic glances. 30 minutes passed. The final boarding call echoed through the speakers. Just before the doors closed, a sharply dressed man in a suit boarded the plane and made his way directly to Julian. "Mr. Carter," he said with a nod. "My name is Eric Lang. I'm the regional director for Transair. We've just been made aware of what happened." Julian looked up. "I didn't expect a personal visit. It's protocol when there's a VIP concern. I'm here to apologize on behalf of the airline." Julian nodded but remained silent. Lang continued, lowering his voice. "I've reviewed the internal footage and crew report. What happened was unacceptable. We'll be investigating it thoroughly. Would you like to delay your flight and file a complaint formally?" Julian looked around. All eyes were on him. "No," he said. "Let the flight continue. But I want to speak to the flight crew before we take off." Lang hesitated, then nodded. Moments later, the 3 flight attendants and the captain were gathered in front of Julian's seat. Julian stood. "I'm not angry," he began. "I'm disappointed. You didn't follow procedure. You assumed, based on appearance, that someone like me couldn't possibly belong in this seat. That's not just poor service. That's discrimination." None of them met his eyes. "I'm not asking for compensation. I don't want a free ticket. What I want is accountability." Lang stepped forward. "Understood, Mr. Carter. The involved staff will be suspended pending investigation. I'll personally oversee the review." Julian nodded, then returned to his seat. "Good. Let's fly." As the plane cruised at 35,000 feet, the mood in the first-class cabin remained subdued. Conversations were hushed, glances still darted toward Julian Carter, and the tension hung in the air like static. The junior flight attendant now performed her duties quietly, her earlier arrogance gone, replaced with a mechanical professionalism that revealed her unease. Julian had closed his eyes for a while, mentally drafting the next week's board agenda. But his peace was broken when a passenger from coach, an older black man in his 60s, gently tapped him on the shoulder. "Mr. Carter," he said in a low voice, "I just wanted to say thank you for keeping your cool. I saw it all. You handled it with dignity." Julian smiled and nodded. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." The man moved on, returning to his seat. It was a small moment, but it stayed with Julian. An hour later, the flight began its descent into San Francisco. As the plane touched down, An announcement from the captain requested all passengers remain seated. A special team would be boarding immediately. Moments later, airport officials and 2 Transair executives entered the plane and walked to the front. The passengers murmured in confusion, but everything became clear when Julian stood and quietly addressed the group. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you may not know who I am, but I'm Julian Carter, CEO of Nextech. I'm also a significant shareholder in Transair." Gasps rippled through the cabin. What happened on this flight is an example of how bias, subtle or overt, still lives among us. I was judged, not by my boarding pass, not by my ID, but by how I looked. That's not acceptable. He turned toward the flight crew. Effective immediately, the involved staff are suspended. A full investigation will follow, and corporate-wide bias training will be implemented. This flight crew will not work another flight until that training is complete. The junior attendant began to tear up, unable to speak. The pilot nodded solemnly. He knew it was fair. Julian added, "I believe in second chances. But second chances come with responsibility. I hope this is a wake-up call." As he stepped off the plane, the same blonde passenger from earlier approached him. "Mr. Carter," she said, "your words mattered." "Thank you." Julian nodded. "Thank you for filming. The world needs to see this." That night, the video of the incident and Julian's speech went viral. News channels picked it up. Social media lit up with messages of support and outrage. Transair stock dipped slightly the next morning but rebounded stronger a week later when the company publicly embraced Julian's reform policies. Julian never spoke again about the incident. Not in interviews, not even with his team. For him, it wasn't about headlines. It was about setting a precedent. Respect is not optional. And for those who still judged success by the color of someone's skin, Julian Carter had delivered a clear message, from seat 1A to the entire world.